Welcome to Bella Vista Gardening Program. I'm Jerry Horner, and today we have Becky Fox as my guest. And we're going to be talking today about gardening in March and getting ready for the season. Becky is a fellow Master Gardener and also a fellow member of the Bella Vista Garden Club. And she's been graciously accepted my invitation to talk about what's going on in the garden for March, what we need to do. And we're talking about planting seeds early, getting a head start on the season and upcoming events, and then what the main things to do in your garden in March.
Right.
So the upcoming events basically is pretty slow season for gardening, but the Bella Vista Garden Club holds its annual card party in March, and it's going to be March 20th at the United Lutheran Church.
Right.
And we've done it for, what, 4 or 5 years?
At least.
5 or 6 years, maybe. But all the benefits, all the proceeds go to the Dorothy Wallace Scholarships. And it's going to be on Friday the 20th from 12 to 4. And it's always a lot of fun. We have great food.
We always sell out our tables.
Yes.
So if you're interested, you really need to call and reserve a table.
Right.
We put on a lovely event with wonderful door prizes and really good food.
Oh, the food, everybody loves the food. We have great food. So anyway, that's coming up. And you can check the website for more information. It's bellavistagardenclub.com. That's our website. So it's going to be a great event and worthwhile. Okay, then March is when we really get started in the gardening.
It is, and it seems this year that the entire winter happened in February.
Right.
We have had just very strange weather. But we need to start thinking in March about getting out and preparing our gardens for the blooming season.
Right.
Hopefully, the old adage that March is in like a lion and out like a lamb will apply, because we really need to be able to get out soon and prepare our gardens.
Right. And there was a website I just discovered lately, and it's called A Way to Garden, and it's by Martha Roach, and she had a great quote about March gardening. I'll have to read it. It says, "Best March gardening advice: make like a daffodil, poke your head up, and have a look around. But be prepared to abort the mission, perhaps several times, and even get snowed on. Be nimble, ready to act when the forces are willing, but be patient too." So that's really March. You don't know what's going to happen. So
it's so hard to be patient when it gets a little warmer. You
really
want to get out and dig in the dirt.
You want to get out there. And I know for our plant sales in March and April, we would be sometimes in T-shirts, and then the next week we'd have coats on and earmuffs and gloves, and you just didn't know what was going to happen. It just goes up and down here so much. So anyway, we're going to have to be trimming some things too. And also, this is the month you have to trim your grasses, your perennial grasses and your liriope. And we do have, Beth Strickland has done a take root section, or a little DVD, about how to trim your grasses. And a lot of times your big grasses will get dead in the center and you have a problem. So she's going to address that in this video of how to trim your grasses and take care of them. So let's look and see how it's done.
Well, it's late winter here in northwest Arkansas, and even though we've had a very mild winter so far, it's now time to take care of our annual chores such as pruning and cutting down our ornamental grasses. Now, I like to leave my ornamental grasses intact throughout the winter because I like the foliage and I like to see it in the garden. But in early spring, like it is now, it's time that we need to cut off the the dead foliage to make room for the new grass to emerge from the inside. So your normal procedure for doing this is I usually take a string or a bungee cord and I tie up all of the grass as neatly as possible, and then with some garden shears or some kind of power tool I can cut off the dead foliage at about a foot above the ground. And then however, last summer when I was observing this Miscanthus gracilius, I noticed that the inside of the plant was starting to die out. And that is an indication that your plant needs to be divided and it needs to be rejuvenated. So what you normally would do, you would dig up the entire plant, you would divide it into 4 sections, and replanting one of those sections back into this original location. And then the other 3 plants you can spread around your garden to other spots or even give away to friends. But when you do that, your poor grass is basically starting over from the beginning all over again. So I've got a solution that I've been using for the last couple of years to kind of rejuvenate the inside of the plant without having to dig it up and start all over. Starting on the inside of the plant, push back the leaves to get a close look at the inside. Make a mental note of the area that has died out and needs to be removed. Using a reciprocating saw, begin to core out the center of the plant, much like coring out an apple. It is very important to carve through the tough core to get all the way underneath the plant. Pull out the dead core and discard. Now you can backfill the inside of the plant with fresh topsoil. The inside of the plant will rejuvenate in no time. This Miscanthus is well on its way to a full recovery. For the Benton County Master Gardeners, this is Beth Strickland and Take Root.
Well, Beth always does a great job with those. She does a great job with those take roots. And there's another way on that that solution. If you want instant gratification.
Yes, Beth is the past president of the Benton County Master Gardeners, and she's always full of really good tips.
Right.
And another way to rejuvenate your grasses, after you dig it out and put in a minimal amount of soil, you can take a potted 1-gallon pot of the same grass and just plop it in that hole and fill the dirt around it, and then you don't have to wait for the plant to rejuvenate.
Right. There's 2 ways to do it, whichever way, you know. But either way, you'll have your grass rejuvenated. So.
Right.
But it's really important to get your grasses all trimmed in February, March. We're a little late because February is such a bad month, but March is when we have to get them trimmed.
Yeah, you have to be real careful when you're trimming them not to cut off your new leaves, or they'll be brown when they grow up
they'll
bigger.
Be all cut off too.
And
I have a way on my liriope that my husband and I work together, and I grab up the liriope in a clump, and then he takes the loppers and just goes under and just whacks it off. Then I take that and put it in my compost.
Yeah.
So some people use weed whackers, and then that stuff goes all over the place. So, you know, I like to get it in a clump. And
I've also heard of people just mowing it down if you have a grass catcher, and that if it's in an open area, that works pretty well
but
too.
The liriope does have to be trimmed this month. It does. So, also, we need to trim bushes.
Yes, and
fall blooming bushes.
We need to do Rose of Sharon, butterfly bushes, and spirea. Also, your crepe myrtles, it's very important to trim them this time of the year, but not to commit crepe murder.
No, I don't want to do that.
According to Janet Carson, who is head of the Master Gardeners here in Arkansas, every year she reminds people not to commit crepe myrtle.
Yeah.
You should go in and thin your crepe myrtles because they come in different sizes and they're going to grow to that height no matter if you cut them off or not. So you get a much more graceful and beautiful plant if you thin instead of just cutting them, whacking them back.
Well, a lot of people, they just take it and cut it straight across, and it's horrible what happens to the crepe myrtles then.
That's right, crepe myrtle.
That's crepe myrtle. Okay, and then the trim the roses. We need to trim our roses in March, and our rosarian in the Master Gardeners, past rosarian who's passed away, Bonnie Seals, always said when the forsythias bloom, that's when you trim your roses. So I kind of watch for the forsythias when they bloom. You want to trim your hybrid teas and your floribundas and your knockout roses, and you want to take at least a third off. You want to, or get down to about 18 inches,
right.
12 to 18 inches on your roses, and that way anything that's overwintered in the top will be gone. And you might want to just take that top part of your rose bush and just get rid of it and not put it in your compost. The other thing is on your climbing roses, you don't want to trim those until after their first bloom. You want them to bloom first and then trim your climbers and get them under control. But let them bloom first. And then as soon as you see the new leaf growth on your roses, watch for your black spot. You can put some cornmeal around the bottom of the bush, which really helps with your fungus. So that can help. And then seeds can be planted indoors too.
Yes, if you want to get a head start, you can do your seed planting in a number of different ways inside. You want to do it about 6 weeks before the last frost is predicted. And there's some different versions of the last frost. Normally,
could be any time.
we think in the past about April 15th, but according to the website A Way to Garden, they're saying that you should wait maybe until the 21st or the 30th, through the 30th, to begin your planting. But you can check your local weather and
I planted. I did get some seeds planted just this week. I took a little plastic container. Sometimes I'll use those strawberry containers. You buy strawberries because they already got holes in them, and they have a little lid that you can put on top to make it like a little greenhouse to keep the moisture in. But this, I just put some holes in this little spinach container, and then I put the seeds in, and then I tried the technique where they put just a one layer of toilet tissue, and then put your seeds on top of that. You can see where your seeds are.
That's a clever idea.
It was very helpful, because then I didn't have all these seeds in one clump. And I hate to thin transplants out, because I feel like I'm throwing these plants away. So I like to make sure that every seed I plant,
you want them all to
I want them all to make it.
Yeah, they're all your favorites.
So anyway, I got these marked as to what's planted in each area, and then you'd water it good. And then you put the lid on. It makes it like a little greenhouse, keeps the moisture in, and then just kind of monitor it. And you can put it like on a towel after you water it, or in another saucer to catch the water so it doesn't go all over. And then also I did the eggshells. This is another way you can start your plants in little eggshells, half the eggshells. And I put at the top of the lid what I planted in each area. And I also left one open down here so that I can grab this whole container and not poke my finger in one of the eggshells. So I just have an empty spot on this side right over here.
Nice, inexpensive ways to
it's all free,
to recycle,
Oh, yeah.
sort of, at the same time.
And I'm the recycle queen. So.
Oh yes, well Bella Vista is known for their good recycling.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing we can use is the little Jiffy things you can buy at the box stores. They have this size where you can plant maybe tomatoes or cucumbers or something, get them started. They also have a big tray of smaller little plugs for annuals or things like that. So that's another way you can start your seeds. And then you have to be careful when you water these little eggshells to use a small watering can. Otherwise, if you use a big one, it's just going to splash everything. So very gently water your plants with
that way you can
spigot.
pinpoint where you're putting your water.
Right.
That's a good idea.
And there's some seeds that have to be stratified, I think they call it.
Yes.
Scored. These are little seeds that are
Castor beans, aren't they?
yeah, castor bean seeds. And they are poisonous. You have to be very careful with your castor beans. It makes a wonderful annual plant. It's very tall and big leaves, but what you need to do is just score them with a little knife. Just take a knife and just cut a little score in the side, and then maybe soak them overnight in water before you plant them. So that would be a way to do your really hard beans. There's several, I think morning glories, there's several seeds that need that.
Gives them a little head start
It
there.
does. It's really hard for them to come out of that hard core.
I've heard that in Texas they use cement mixers to score the bluebonnets before the highway department reseeds.
Oh, I didn't even hear
And they do
that.
such volume, and bluebonnets are another thing that have to be scored to
I
germinate.
hadn't heard that. Okay, so just, plant your seeds early, about 6 to 8 weeks before you put them out, and then you'll be on your way. And you can save a lot of money, because like when you buy one of these starts of a lettuce, you're talking about $3–4.
Right.
And I use maybe $2 worth of seeds. You get a packet of seeds for $2, and there's 100 seeds in there. So this is a very, very economical way to get started.
It is. And if you have some seed packets that have kind of turned up in your planting area, they're usually good for 2 or 3 years.
yeah.
But be sure and plant generously, because all of them might not germinate.
And you can test that by putting them like between 2 pieces of paper towel and wet it, and then set it out for a few days, and you'll see them germinate. And like if you put out 5 seeds and only 2 of them germinate, then you know that you have to seed heavier. If they all germinate, then you know they're still all viable. Some seeds will last thousands of years.
Oh. Well, you
They
never
found-
know till you try.
That's right.
So don't throw them out.
No.
Do a little test case.
Okay, do a test. Okay, and that website we talked about earlier, it's called awaytogarden.com, and it's an organic website by that woman named Roach, and she has some great information on there. It tells you about your last frost date. You put in your the date for your area, and it tells you when to plant things, and it's a great website. It's got a lot of information on it.
A
It's
good
also
reference.
chores for the month. There's a chores for the month space on there too. So it's a great little website.
Great.
And then we also have to worry about our shrubs. We've got to start thinking about shrubs.
Yes, we do. We just have to be very careful about trimming, and only trim the dead part. The early part of March is a really good time to do it. And a little trick on something that's deciduous and you're not sure whether it is alive or dead in parts is you can take your fingernail and just scratch it. And if it's green, you see green. I do this on my crepe myrtles. And you can see if it's dead or alive. And if it's dead or brittle, you definitely want to trim that off.
Right.
But don't get too carried away.
Yeah. It's once you start trimming your evergreens and we have a really deep frost or freeze again, any of that new growth that started from trimming,
Right.
it kind of, gets them going, it'll be frozen back again. So just, be careful, and then only trim about 1/3
Correct.
of your bushes. Even if they need a heavy trim, just do about 1/3, no more than 1/3 at a time. Okay. And let's see, what else do we need to do?
With
in
our
March?
beds, we need to clean out the residual leaves that may have gotten caught underneath and look for new growth. And a trick you can do with some of your plants is you can grind up eggshells and put them in your beds. It's very good around hostas.
Oh yeah, that'll keep the
And it
snails
keeps the
slugs
slugs
off.
away, and that really, really works.
Yeah, you can use those sugar, those balls from the the one tree that
sweet gum
balls. You can put those
that's
under
a new
there
trick.
Too. Yeah,
that's very good.
And so that's another thing you can do. And you want to maybe make notes when you're cleaning out your leaves. We're going to have a lot of leaves this spring.
Yes.
Because there's so many trees that didn't drop their leaves in the fall. You know, usually they say if the leaves stay on the tree, it's dead, but that's not the case this year. Most of the Japanese maples haven't lost their leaves, but they're all going to be coming down in the spring. We're going to have a bigger spring cleanup this year than ever before. But you just kind of, as you go around your garden and clean up your leaves, kind of make notes and write it down. What plants need to be divided, what needs to be moved, because you get into the garden season, you forget all this stuff. I forget, you know, I think, I want to move that, and then I forgot to move it. So just, you know, make notes to yourself, too. Keep a journal.
It's good to keep a journal and make notes of where a little landscape drawing maybe of where you've planted things that do die back in the winter, so you know what to expect.
Yeah, without markers, you don't know where they are. So. And then your bulbs, you can plant your gladiola bulbs, and you can stagger them and plant them, you know, maybe a week apart or 10 days apart, so your bloom time will be longer. They'll bloom at different times, so it staggers your bloom time too.
So you can enjoy them as cut flowers a longer time.
Yeah, and your tulips and daffodils, they're going to be blooming probably March, April. I've got some crocus blooming now and some things coming up. And you don't want to cut that foliage off. I know I've said it many times before, but you have to leave that foliage on. That's what feeds that bulb and puts the flower back into it for next year, is that green leaf dying back and feeding the bulb. So it's kind of unsightly at times, but you know, just kind of overlook it for a while. And then
for about 6 weeks or so,
you can put up with that for that time. And then
your house plants, we don't want to forget about those. Now that it's going to be warmer in April and they're going to start blooming again and growing, you need to fertilize them. And be careful if there are things that you want to put outside.
Yeah, you can't do that yet.
Not yet. That April frost date's very, very important, because if you put them back too soon, you'll be sorry.
I don't usually put mine back outside till May.
Yeah, me too.
Till it's really safe. You know,
it has to be 50 degrees at night
at
before
least,
they'll be safe.
Consistently, right. And then lawns, we got to do the pre-emergent on the lawns in March.
To control that crabgrass, hopefully by March 15th is kind of a target date to have that done.
Yeah, get that on your lawns. And then the perennials, you can dig your perennials and divide them anytime now. You know, it's like as long as the weather is cooperating, it's a good time to divide those. And you want to fertilize your peonies. Though peonies do not get divided in the spring. They like to be divided in the fall. So, but they need fertilizer. You need to fertilize your peonies and your wisteria and get those fertilized in the spring.
It's a good time to divide your hostas too.
Oh yeah.
And that's always a good thing to be able to share, because hostas will recreate from a very small amount, a few leaves, and so that's a really good way to share.
And you can take those and divide them when the crowns are just starting to break
barely
ground.
up, yes.
And then don't just put 1 or 2 in a clump. You know, that's going to be too small. But you want to have at least 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7 eyes, they call them.
Yeah.
And then the rest you can share with someone else.
And it's amazing how well they'll do the first year.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, they get bigger every year.
Oh,
so
yeah.
they're a really nice shaped plant.
Most of your perennials, they need to be divided every 2 to 4 years.
Yeah. And then they stay healthy, too.
Yeah. And they put on a good show.
Yes.
Yeah, they do. And your vegetables, we can do vegetables early, too. Put them in the seeds, but
you can do that. And then your vegetables that like the cool weather, you can go ahead and plant cabbage. Now this is as soon as you can dig in the dirt, of course, when it's not frozen anymore. You can plant cabbage, kale, lettuce, peas, rutabagas, spinach, and turnips. Onion sets can be planted later in March. Start planting vegetable seeds like peppers, tomatoes, indoors in your little mini greenhouses, so they'll be ready when the last frost date is here.
And I don't usually plant my tomatoes outside till May. you know.
Oh, I know.
You can plant them, and then you can replant them, and you can replant them.
That's
but
right.
the box stores have all these things coming in March and April. It's too early to be buying all these things.
But it's so tempting.
It is tempting. It really is.
But it is true. If you wait till May, your tomatoes won't have to be replanted, and it'll be warm enough for them to get a really good growth pattern.
Right. And then when you do plant them, you really need to plant them deep. Your tomatoes, if you have a tomato that you're planting and it's, say, this tall, I'd plant it so that only this much of the plant is showing.
Yeah.
All the rest of that plant will set out roots. It just all the roots will be coming out from that lower part of the plant.
That's how it's fed.
Yeah.
To make it grow. So the more root structure you have, the better.
Yeah.
Yes,
so plant your tomatoes deep, and you'll have a great batch.
Yeah.
Of tomatoes.
They'll be good.
Now on the trees and the shrubs, if you planted trees or shrubs in this past year, you've hopefully been monitoring all your water over the winter. We've had some times it's been a little dry, but we've had a fairly good amount of moisture this winter. But just be sure and get your trees and shrubs watered and monitor that water. And you can and be sure not to prune your spring blooming.
Like azaleas.
I get calls all the time who wants to, they want to trim their azaleas and shape them up, but you're going to cut the blooms off. So if it blooms in the spring, don't cut it. Trim and prune your bushes after they bloom.
And you can look at your individual bushes, and if you see buds, you know not to trim them until after they bloom.
Yes.
It's amazing how those little blooms make it through the winter.
I know, they start setting their blooms in, mid-summer and late summer, and they are on that bush you don't see them sometimes, but they're on that bush all year.
I'm always amazed at the azalea blooms that make it through.
Yeah. Well, the Bella Vista Garden Club meeting will be held this month on the 25th of March. And we will be meeting at 11 o'clock at the United Lutheran Church and have a little light lunch, which is always good.
Yes.
And wonderful food. And you don't have to make reservations, just, come and join us. And this month the program is going to be pollinators, increasing awareness. And C.W. Doss is going to be doing the program. He's a Master Gardener. And guests are always welcome. We love to have guests come to our meetings. They're always informative. You always learn a lot of things. So, and there's more information on the website. It's bellavistagardenclub.com. And we try to keep things like this new website that we talked about. I put that on as a link under our gardening information, because there's so much information out there. It's just a world of information. But you have to be careful who you're going, what website you're going to. You want to make sure it's a reputable website. So
this is true.
Yeah. So, well, thank you, Becky, for joining me today. We've really covered a lot of territory as far as getting ready for the spring and for the summer.
Yeah, we hope that we've kind of planted the seed of knowledge about what to do to prepare your garden for the summer blooming, the spring blooming, and all those beautiful flowers.
Right. We're looking forward to it.
Yo, aren't we, though?
And I hope you've enjoyed the program, and that you will join us again next month. Until then, don't forget to stop and smell the roses.